Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Power and Paying webinar. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jane Pires. I am the Energy and Water Ombudsman for Queensland, and it's my great pleasure to have you all joining us today, and also my special thanks to all of our presenters who are joining us today. I will commence proceedings, the more formal proceedings in a few moments, but just wanted to make sure everyone could hear me and that we were all ready to go here, and just say hello from bright sunny Queensland today. I'm hoping it's bright and sunny everywhere else across the state today, and I also know some of our presenters are coming in from interstate, so we're doing our best to make them feel how wonderful Queensland is, that they should be moving up north to enjoy the wonderful summer we're about to have. Great. Okay, so we've clocked 12 o'clock, so I will commence, just mindful of the time and making sure we've got a lot to get through, so I want to make sure we get the opportunity to get everything done today. So before we commence, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianships of land, seas and waters of Queensland and across Australia. I would also like to acknowledge the First Nations people who are joining us in our session today. And I pay our respects to the First Nation elders past, present and their future leaders who continue cultural and spiritual connections to the country, and we recognise and respect their valuable contributions to Australia and the global society. So before we get into introductions, I have some housekeeping items that I have to share with you. So just to let you know that your microphone has been turned off to ensure that we have a stable internet connection and that we have clarity in the conversation so everyone can hear the words that are being shared today. You can ask questions of our guests during the sessions using the chat function at the top of your screen. We will also be calling for questions during the Q&A section towards the end of the webinar, and you can put your hand up to ask these questions by using the raising hand icon, which for those of you who have not seen it before, it's the smiley face with the hand up there as well. We will be sharing links and announcements in the chat throughout the webinar, so if someone refers to a document or so forth, the link to that document will appear there for you to be able to open up and access. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the EWOQ website in a few days, and we'll also share this link to all the attendees that registered for the session today. As always, in a community of sharing, please keep your questions respectful and targeted to the specific subject matter we're talking about. Unfortunately, this is not a space where we can talk about specific individual customers or a provider. And if you do have some issues like that, please touch base with us at the end or give us a call and we can direct you through to the right area or the right person to speak to in one of our schemes as well, one of our scheme members, I should say. If you experience any technical problems, please email Henry he's one of our EWOQ leaders, and Henry's email address is ewoq_it@ewoq.com.au. And just in the subject line, please put FCAQ webinar. And lastly, we will have a short survey at the end of the webinar. The link will be posted on the chat at the end of the session. And we just ask if you could take a few minutes and provide your feedback, because your feedback's really vital in helping us improve this as we go along. And as I'm sure you'll agree, they're a great way to connect without having to travel long distances to get to have the discussion. But on saying that, I'm really looking forward to when we can get back to some real good face-to-face conversations and discussions as well. So what I would like to do now is to take the opportunity to just introduce you to the panel of presenters here today. So I'll just go through them in alphabetical order. So firstly there we have, well, okay, so my alphabetical order is probably a little bit offline now, but the first one I'm going to introduce you to, for those who do not know John O'Malley. John O'Malley is the Executive Officer of FCAQ Queensland, and John should be there on your screen right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks very much,
It's
John.
pretty close to A. So
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'll try my alphabetical order practice and see how I go. So from AGL, we have Guru Pradhan. I hope I pronounced that right for you, Guru.
Yes.
Wonderful.
10 out of 10 for that.
Great. So Guru is the affordability manager within AGL. So he'll be able to share his insights and information with us today. So from EnergyAustralia, I have Amrita Sethi, who's the customer resolution leaders. And Amrita is coming up on screen now. Welcome, Amrita. You joined us last year, so I'm sure your face will be familiar to a few of our attendees. So
Thanks,
thank you.
Dave. Hello, everyone.
And I also have from EnergyAustralia, Kimberly Selby Fulgrave. I hope I've pronounced that correctly for you there, Kimberly.
You have. Thank you, Jane. Good
Wow.
afternoon, everybody.
Wonderful. So Kimberly's the vulnerability group leader. So again, got coverage from both aspects there from EnergyAustralia. So that's really good. From Ergon Energy Retail, we have Georgie Mackey from wonderful Townsville. And Georgie is the credit relationship specialist for retail service and operations. So that's a mouthful of a title there, Georgie.
Sure is, Jane. Hello, everyone.
I'll just say you're Ergon in Townsville, and that should be enough answer and information for everyone. So from Origin, we have Mel Holmes Allen, Customer Advocacy Manager, and Mel's joining us from Adelaide. So I love her. You need to move north, Mel. You need to move
I
north.
absolutely do. It's meant to be 30 today here in Adelaide, and I tell you what, it's not 30. It's raining and overcast, and yeah, I was hoping for some sun. But good afternoon, everyone.
Well, I don't know who you complain about to having bad weather predictions, but I'm sure it would be a very busy ombudsman if there was one available to us all.
Yes, very true.
And last but by no means least, we have Derek Francis, Compliance and Customer Experience Manager from Red Energy. So,
Good
Derek.
afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So there we go. So these are our panel today, and they are all ready to answer the questions that I'm going to pose at them, and anything else that we may have questions come out of the audience or so forth. So I will kick off now. I'll see how we go in relation to time, whether every question can be answered by every panel. I'll just judge the time and see how we're going. So the first question that I want to put through to the panel for discussion is regarding the Home Energy Emergency Assistance Scheme, or HEAS as we all love to call it. So as we all know, HEAS is a key support for energy customers who are struggling financially and cannot pay their bills. Over 3 years ago, there was a review by the Queensland Department of Energy and Water Supply of the HEAS scheme and process. One of the key reforms that was customers could apply for HEAS on closed accounts if the debt had not been sent to clients. Sent to collections. I'll try that again, everyone. Apologies. One of the key reforms was that customers could apply for HEAS on closed accounts if the debt had not been sent to collections, usually at about 60 days. Unfortunately, many financial counsellors and their clients with closed accounts are still being told by retailers, staff, including hardship and resolution teams, that they cannot apply for HEAS. In some cases, the customer's account is referred to external debt collection before the 60 days. So what we're really wanting to know and understand from our panel members here today is, are you aware of this reform? And if so, what sort of action or training have you undertaken within your organisation to ensure that the frontline staff are aware of this so that the assistance can be provided? So for this first one, I may do you all in alphabetical order to make it easy. So Guru, I'll start off with yourself.
Thank you, Jane, for the question. So home energy assistance, yes, so firstly to answer the question, yes, we are aware. And in all honesty, we had a discussion with one of our financial counsellors a couple of weeks ago as well, and this was brought up in that discussion as well. So home energy assistance scheme, it's a really good opportunity for customers in Queensland with inactive accounts within 60 days to apply. So what we have done in this is the best practice procedure that we use for frontline staff, in that when anyone's moving out from a premise, we do have of additional information that we are now looking to add, where they would where it's a prompt for them to recreate that message that you are moving out from this premise, and these are some additional features that would be available. So that we are definitely addressing that. Additionally, when we do send out the final bills, it does have that information for the customers outlining the entitlements and the features that's available as well. So definitely moving forward from this, we are currently undergoing a review of our process, which deals with customers who are inactive. And what we are really trying to do is pull up some insights, looking at the eligibility criteria and understanding, are there any customers who have not availed this option, and can this be available for them? So definitely that's something on the cards. One challenge I would like to call out is customer engagement. What we would really hope to see is more customers, if they are aware, to please reach out and avail this option as well.
Wonderful, great. Thank you very much. So Kimberly, I think you would be the best one from EnergyAustralia to respond on this for us.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, happy to chat on this. Certainly, yes, we are very well aware of the change. Look, we did recently in September do some refresher communications to all of our frontline staff, and also publish that in our weekly newsletter. I have confirmed and can say it is very clear in our processes around eligibility and calls out specifically around final accounts, and the eligibility does apply within the, as long as it hasn't been referred. So absolutely, we are aware. I think some of the challenges is we do at times, I guess from a day 27 for us is where it would go to a third party. And so it is a lot earlier than that 60 days. And that's just because we don't have internal recoveries. So at day 27, it does go to our third parties or thereabouts. So that is probably what you're feeling and hearing. So I think that certainly there's some opportunity for us to have a look at that for specific customers, in particular, obviously, if they have, perhaps been part of our program in the past. So certainly I think we'll be pulling out and having a look at opportunities there. The other sort of thought and call out I had is often if our agents do jump onto the Queensland government website just to clarify eligibility and different things that they may not be aware of and they can't find it internally, and it's not very clear on the website around that final account and that time frame. So I'm not sure if there's an opportunity to perhaps revisit and refresh that just to make it very clear, so customers also can be informed, and I think the time frame is prevalent there, so that they do have that early contact with us to ensure that we can help and assist them moving forward.
Great, thank you very much, Kimberly. Can I just clarify a point there? If the debt has gone to an external agency and a customer contacts them, will the agency within, sort of a day 30 or something like that, would they send them back through to your organisation to help with that process? Or would they just ask the customer to progress it through the HEAS process without EnergyAustralia's assistance or support?
That would come through back to us.
Right, okay. Great, thank you very much. And look, certainly I can raise the point that you've raised there about the information on the website. I'll make sure I get that feedback through to Department of Energy and the relevant teams there for the HEAS sites. Absolutely get that feedback provided.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. So Georgie from Ergon.
Thanks, Jane. Excuse me. So absolutely, we're aware of the reforms, and we undertook comprehensive training and updating of our processes and systems. So customers are advised of their payment assistance options on the bill, on the final bill, and if they request payment assistance, then HEAS eligibility is certainly discussed at all levels for our frontline staff. Okay, so we do have specialist teams that customers can be referred to, but certainly our initial frontline team should be discussing that as soon as a customer requests payment assistance. some of the issues that we're facing, particularly over COVID, is that customer engagement, like exactly what Guru said. So we really need our customers to reach out to us so that we can offer it. We are doing outbound calls in-house, specifically segmenting customers with final accounts and reaching out to them to see if they need any payment assistance. But it's that customer engagement that we really need to increase. So I really implore everybody to get customers to contact us if they need that payment assistance. The other thing I wanted to mention, that with the HES on finalised accounts, we are getting some feedback that 60 days is from the date that the account is closed. So if an account is rebilled for a final bill, which sometimes happens, it's not included. It may be past that 60 days. So customers are receiving that rebill and contacting us for payment assistance, and concession services are saying, look, it's not within that 60-day time frame. So I think it's really important that customers contact us as soon as they receive that first bill and are aware of those time frames as well.
Right. Thank you. That's great clarification there, Georgie, because that can be really important. Particularly too, if the disputes on a final bill is regarded an estimated bill to an actual, there's always those issues. So really good clarification there for everyone as well. Thank you. So Mel from Origin.
Thank you, Jane. And it is a great question, and it's so important that customers are aware of government grants such as here, that they're available for support. And unlike other government grants in other states, it's great that Queensland customers can access this support on a final bill. So to answer the question, we at Origin are absolutely aware of this reform. And when it was announced, all staff went through comprehensive training. Anyone that spoke with a Queensland customer was involved in that training, and they were trained on explaining to customers that they can apply for HERE obviously on an active account, but also on a closed account. So the teams that involved with that were definitely our Power On team through our customer advocacy space, as well as our credit teams that often outbound call customers with final bills. So I can absolutely say it is something that we are aware of, and if you do find that you have any pushback from any of our employees, absolutely let us know. But again, just like some of the other retailers have said, the customer engagement has been a challenge. So what we have recently done is contacted Queensland customers to let them know that HERE is available on active and closed accounts.
Wonderful. That's great, Mel. Thank you very much. And Derek.
Yeah, look, very much the same as everybody else has said. For us, well aware of the change. We've trained our staff. I guess what I would like to reassure our attendees today is there's a benefit to a retailer as well in being able to offer these tools to a customer commercially, and it's a bit dirty to talk commercially in a forum like this, but commercially it reduces our costs a little bit if we can help those customers, whether they're moving on with us to another site or moving with another retailer. It gives the customer an opportunity to do a bit of a fresh start as well. So yeah, we absolutely tell people about it, but similar to everybody else, the engagement is the key, and we know it's not just customers choosing not to talk to us. There's various reasons why that happens. So it's all about engagement, which is probably going to be a theme today, I think.
Wonderful. That's great, Derek. And look, absolutely, I think it's always great where you can provide someone the opportunity in that situation to clear the decks, for the want of a better word, or make a significant impact on clearing the debt. Just helps everyone move forward a little bit more. So that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm not certain if we've got any questions that have come up by the audience at this stage. So we'll move on to the next question, and then we can come back to that issue if questions are raised at the end. So the next question, it talks about what happens when the customer moves and how can we improve this process for the consumers. So as you know, there are now more than 35% of householders in Queensland living in tenanted properties. And with our market here, getting into a property is just getting harder and harder, but I would suggest that's probably similar in all states. But we just seem to have a growing issue here in Queensland. And the average length for a tenancy is 13 months. So when a tenant moves to a new property and stays with the same retailer, their concessions in Queensland, such as the electricity rebate, life support, medical cooling and heating concessions, do not automatically move with them. So really keen to understand from you all, what can your organisation do or have you done to ensure the concessions are discussed at connections and move with them so that the customer's not impacted? There's already the cost of moving, so then not having these come forward really can impact them, you know, in their first sort of quarter after that move. So we might go back the other way this time and allow Derek to kick off with the response on that question.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, so moving house is an opportunity, I guess, for retailers, because this is when customers choose whether they want to switch to another provider as well. And I guess not so much with gas and electricity, but choose what services they want to take with them. So we make sure we include all that concession and life support information in our scripting for any connection. So whether it's a move of an existing customer, whether they've got concessions at the current property or not, because things might change between properties. The number of people in the house or the actual people in the house might change. So there may have been no concession valid at the first place, but there is at the second. So it's so important to talk about that at the startup of a new account, and with life support as well. And we put that in our quality program. So we're checking a certain number of calls to make sure that sort of stuff's set in there, that they're those vital things. We also have an exceptions process. So I think for us, the bigger issue probably isn't not putting the concessions in there in the first place, but it's getting the validations correct and making sure they go through. And then what do you do afterwards? So we've got a process in place where we call, email, follow up with customers. And sometimes we can tell just from looking at the, validation fail what it is, and we can fix it ourselves. But it's about that follow up to make sure we get that validation fixed in a timely manner for the customer. Hope that answers that question.
Great, thank you very much, Derek. So Mel, anything different from the Origin perspective?
Look, certainly very similar to what Derek said. It is a part of our scripting. So we've got a clear outline for every move in Queensland. So every time a customer moves in Queensland, for making sure concessions applied. If concession is existing, it should absolutely follow the customer to the new property. And for all others, we ask if the customer has an eligible concession card. And if the customer does, then it's applied then and there on the first initial call. Customers also can request move-ins to new properties online. And there is a mandatory question asked in our move-in form as to whether the customer has a concession card. And if the customer answers yes, they can absolutely populate their concession details into the electronic form. And customers also have an option to go into their My Account profile to update their concession card details at any time. And we have live chat as well. So there's a lot of options available for customers to call us or contact us to have their concession applied. But absolutely, if the concession is validated and applied to their account, then it will follow them to the new property.
Wonderful, great, thank you. Georgie.
Yeah, very similar process with Ergon. So at the move-in, customers, whether it be by phone or online, customers are asked if they are eligible for a rebate. So that's a really important question, and that information is also held on the person record in our system as well. So agents are able to verify that. If it is missed, when customers actually request payment assistance, that's part of every call as well. So reconfirming you don't have a rebate applied, are you eligible? So we want to capture that information to give customers as much assistance as possible. Yeah, so very similar process. Again, we have quality programs as well. So we're listening to calls, we're identifying if there's any issues with these things and addressing it with agents as well.
Great, thank you. And Rita, this may be a response, I think, from yourself.
Yes, this is where your disadvantage going sort of forth, because I think we have a bit of a trend here where I can also confirm that our stock standard process most certainly sees that these critical details when it comes to concession follow the customer regardless of where they move to. in speaking to some of my colleagues, I have also found out that it is part of our mandatory scripting. So whilst we have a system control for this to move along with the customer record, we also have a mandatory process, much like some of my colleagues here have said, where we actually ask the customer specifically which account they would like for that to be pointed at or applied to. So we ensure we're doing the right thing. Some of the other things I've also looked into in preparation for today is what our digital journey looks like from a customer perspective. So making sure that we mirror the same requirements in should a customer choose to move home through a digital experience. And lastly, we also have a third-party channels. I'm not sure if everyone here does, but I'd hazard a guess that you also have some third parties that that do this. We don't actually have our third parties handle move calls. We do them ourselves for this reason. So we're fairly confident that we have all the right processes and controls in place. And if there is something that seems to be not right and we haven't picked up through our data quality and our voice recognition quality programs, then we would be really asking to know more about them. It's identifying things like this that help us really shine light on root causes. And then if we've got some additional controls that we need to build in place, we come to learn of those. So if there are specific scenarios like this, I would encourage you to get in touch with myself or Kimberly directly.
Right. Wonderful. And Uri, you're lucky last this time.
Really, it's really nice to see a lot of similarities because it is very critical. Life support, if you look at it, concessions, very critical. So just a couple of things I would like to add. Something that we have and would be with other organizations as well. Looking at systems, the way our system is designed, we have very unique numbers for customers, which is more like sort of a parent number. And what that looks at is if customers moving between properties, we tend to assign that to that unique number. So what that helps us to do is if a customer has got life support, there are visual prompts that will prompt the agents to call out that we noticed that in the previous property you've got life support, that you are moving into a new property, are you likely to carry this forward, and really have that proactive discussion along with the concessions that you've had concessions in the previous property. We can link it to the new property if you're still eligible and have that discussion. So systems really helps us in providing that visual prompt to our agents, and it's also linked with online as well from a digital adoption perspective. The second element I would like to talk about is the call flow. In the way the call flow is designed, we have kept concessions and life support right at the beginning of the call. So once we ascertain and that the nature of the call is where customers moving between properties, the first thing we would want to talk about is about concession and about life support, and then we would get into the other nitty-gritties of setting up the account. So definitely it is of critical importance as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much, everyone. And look, I think the recent rule change for the life support and making it easier for the people to make the changes and so forth, I think that was a really great rule change. Just to make the hurdle a little bit less higher for the parties is really great. So that was really good. Wonderful. Just have a question that while we're here, I might just ask. Just keen, the question's from Rose, but Rose, if you're comfortable, I'll call it out or I'll speak it. So if the validation does not go through, say, because of not matching the Centrelink or retailer data, do you let the customer know? Just wondering why, if when you talk about what you've done and all your processes in place, why we still have customers that where their concessions have fallen off. So anyone, I won't go around the group again, but has anyone got a response to that they would like to, or a comment they would like to share?
I might share because I think I spoke about it at the start. We've got the process where we check validations. So if it's something, if we go back and listen to a call and find out that we spelt John's name incorrectly because we've heard the voice, we look at what's on the screen and that's what's caused the validation, we'll correct that. But if it's something that the customer needs to know about as well, we'll get in touch with them, because sometimes the validation fails because it comes back that the concession is no longer valid for an energy concession, or that there might be some other problem with it. So yeah, it's really vital to get back to the customer, because it might not just be affecting their energy, it could be affecting other services as well. So yeah, we definitely get back to the customer and tell them, unless it's something as simple as we spelt the surname SMITH when it should be SMYTH. We'll fix it ourselves.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks very much, Derek. I suppose, has anyone got anything different to that or any other additions that they may do in response to that? Well, I suppose then the million-dollar question is then why anyone got a view of why they do think that we still have customers having concessions falling off, or, you know, anything else you think that the attendees could know or understand about the process that may help it go more smoothly for them, or that the advice they can give to any of their clients when they're dealing with them?
Just one opportunity we've seen is where a customer has done their move online, and it might be that they've just perhaps not linked it to their move out. It would at times, depending on the information they provide, doesn't link to an existing account automatically. And subsequently, if they don't provide their concession details, doing it online, and it's not linked to their old account, it's not automatically linked. So very small proportion, but that could be a driver, is just how they're doing it online. And if they're not linking it to their move out, we won't necessarily automatically link them together.
Great. Excellent. And I know there was a comment there from Lynn that the healthcare cards have expiry dates, so they can drop off the system. So I'm certain that that would contribute as well. By no fault of either party here. That's just the system happens, and that's where it occurs. Sorry, just looking at a comment that's come up now. Great, thank you very much. So and attendees there, we've experienced this with our clients. Sometimes our clients don't have a first name. Their names are listed as a surname only on their identification, and when they open the account, the name has been split across. So yeah, naming conventions, you know, can make a big difference. So thanks very much. I'm hoping I've pronounced, is it Dragana? Thank you very much, Dragana, for your comment and sharing there as well. Wonderful. So I'll move on to the next question. So it's talking about vulnerable customers and activities that we're undertaking. So just a bit of background here. It is acknowledged that many customers, especially vulnerable customers, are difficult to reach as there are barriers, language, anxiety, previous negative experiences, and make it difficult for them to engage. Likewise, when they do manage to engage, they tell us that they felt pressured into accepting repayment plans that they cannot pay, and then default and leave the hardship program, which can often lead to disconnection. One effective way to reach a vulnerable customer is partnership with the community sector. So what we'd like to understand here is what partnership initiatives has your organisation undertaken to support vulnerable customers, including but not limited to the free energy audit programs? So who would like to go first?
I don't mind kicking off.
Wonderful. Thanks, Georgie.
So look, there's lots of things to unpack in that, but if we just look at the supporting vulnerable customers, in terms of those energy audits, we have our customer assist team, our hardship team, who are trained to complete those energy audits over the phone. We also have the ability for financial counsellors and NGOs to contact our customer assist team directly. So everyone should have access to their contact number, which is provided today. And if you don't, please reach out, because that's a direct line for you to contact our customer assist team and really help those vulnerable customers, and they can complete an energy audit as well. We're actually we're in talks at the moment, talking to an external organisation who will complete those energy audits on our behalf to segmented customers, basically customers who are accessing our hardship program as well. So that's in the works, and we're hoping that that comes into fruition really quickly, because I think that energy education and also understanding your bill is really important for customers to understand, what am I being billed first of all, and also they can see what aren't I receiving, so they're not receiving the rebate, and they can see that and understand where that information is on the bill. So all that comes in hand in hand.
Right. Thank you very much, Georgie. Who else would like to share what their organisation's doing.
I'll jump in.
Great.
So with vulnerable customers, we should accept it's not easy for them to call. It's not an easy scenario to be in. So happy to admit, coming from overseas years ago and being from a diverse country, it is not easy, and one would just get scared to accept the current situation here. And so what we have done through a lot of listening to calls, listening to a lot of getting a lot of feedback from financial counsellors, what we have learned is that there is a fundamental need for our frontline staff to be very equipped and be empathetic in the calls. So what we have done is we have committed in performing quarterly refresher trainings for our frontline staff, specifically focusing so our AGL's Hardship program is called Staying Connected, and we've invested in 75-minute sessions with each team, and we are going to revisit again this in December. And the whole purpose of that is really focusing on the soft skill, really focusing on having the mindset of being empathetic, being able to acknowledge the difficult situations the customers would be going through, and how can we better educate them. And it's through building those relations, I'm pretty positive that we could get a really good outcome. So so definitely investing in agents is something we've done. The second, what we've invested is really through the AGL Energy Literacy program that we've invested close to $6 million over the last 3 months. And what we have come up with what is called our Easy English Guide. We've also come up with ways of unpacking and understanding bills in 5 most commonly spoken languages in Australia. And all this information is available online. And again, the whole purpose of this is purely to educate the customer, because the more they are educated, the more they're empowered to take the right decisions and manage their costs. So this is our commitment in really spreading that. And the same message we are in our discussions with our financial counsellors is the same message we're trying to advocate as well. And I'm pretty positive that through this we should be able to drive a lot of engagement, which pretty much is a win-win situation then for everyone.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you. Mel?
Yes, I was trying to be polite, but I'd love to share. We absolutely offer at Origin the energy audits or consultations to reduce energy and improve energy literacy. And on a case-by-case basis, we also do look at replacing appliances deemed to be contributing high usage at the property. For the customers that disclose they're experiencing family violence, we do have a referral to 1-800 RESPECT, and we also offer additional protections on their account. But we absolutely love getting involved in the community, and we've got absolutely got community investment targets and priorities around creating safe, vibrant, and inclusive communities, building great places to live and work, and caring for our environment and delivering economic benefits. So, and I'm not a Queensland girl, so if I get some of these names wrong, please let me know. But at the moment, we are doing some work on Thursday Island. We're also doing some work around addressing energy poverty in Bamaga and Dumadji.
Close, Mel.
not even
quite
close.
Right, close.
Not even close. But we've also done things like, renovating and creating new homes for Indigenous communities. We're doing some mentoring in high school through the Beacon Foundation, preparing cooked meals through Fair Share, Oz Harvest, packing food hampers with Food Bank. We work with the Red Cross to chat with individuals in isolation during COVID, had employees delivering Meals on Wheels, and a whole lot more. So, the more we get into the community, the more we can build those relationships with our customers, and then hopefully, they become more trusting of us. And then when we reach out to offer support, they'd be more likely to kind of take it up. So just a flavour of some of the work we're doing in Queensland. And I really need to get to Queensland so I can pronounce those names better than I did.
You need to do a tour and go up there. Beautiful parts of Queensland they are. Absolutely. But you will need an air conditioning coming from Adelaide. Absolutely. Yes. Great. So, Derek or Kimberly, anything from yourselves you'd like to contribute? Great.
I'll let Kimberly go first. Yeah, go.
Oh, such a gentleman. Thank you, Derek. Look, very similar to sort of what I'm hearing from the other retailers. Absolutely, we do offer energy audits to all of our customers, and that is a conversation we have quite frequently when they do engage with us. Obviously, it's also on our collateral and information that we do send out to our customers, so that they're very well aware of their options. Similarly to what Mel said with Origin, we do offer appliance swaps, to customers that it may help to reduce their energy usage, and we partner with the good guys for that. Look, from a community perspective, we also do obviously a lot of community work through volunteer days. I will say probably, I've sort of been at EnergyAustralia for 4 months, and it hasn't been as prominent as it would have been, and that's purely driven by just lack of ability to commute and get out and about. So I certainly am really looking forward to everyone being out and us being able to get out there in the communities and get that face-to-face energy that we used to have, and that presence, and I think that makes a world of difference. So certainly looking forward to that. I just did want to touch on just some of the key points in the background you provided, Jane, around just that feeling, the customers feeling pressured, because that really resonates with some of the key priorities and the work and what we've been doing in the energy assist space at EnergyAustralia. And first and foremost, we've switched and focused on, I guess, the right conversation with the customer. So ask, don't tell. The minute you put a number out there, the customer feels pressured to come to something close to that, whether they can afford it or not. So we're really focusing on working with our agents and frontline staff to have the right conversation, to ask, don't tell. Obviously, education is a big part, so it might mean that what they say they can afford doesn't meet usage or doesn't cover their usage and debt. That's okay. It's the key part is, what is their affordability? You can inform them after what that means, and it is, I think, a key change that we've seen 40% reductions in our complaints relating to just that, feeling pressure around, affordability from prior years. So I think that's a good indicator for us to see that switch in conversation has helped. And some of our indicators, obviously, NPS is a key one for us, and as is, quite high and has been trending in that direction for quite some time, to ensure we do, once they do engage, keep engaging. We try and make it easy for them. And the other indicators, I think, are really around just that, the kept rate. So, once we do agree on what's affordable for the customer, is that's a better indicator than what the amount that they're paying. And so for us, that is a really strong conversation, and it's closely combined with just having the right conversation. I would rather have a higher proportion of customers with a higher kept rate and not covering perhaps usage and debt than having a lower amount and having a higher amount, but then they're breaking it, because that means that we have to do the work all over again. Not a nice customer experience. We're not setting them up for success at all. And that's a key, I think, change that we're really working hard to just help the customers see some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, but definitely switch the conversation so they just don't feel that pressure. And it is that ask, don't tell.
Right. Wonderful. Derek.
Thanks. So very similar to what Kim was saying about the pressuring and being mindful of not giving people numbers that they're just going to agree to. One of the things we find is when you can get that engagement, you don't want to create a situation where the customer doesn't want to talk to you again. You want them to be able to trust you. And it's not just the customer. In some cases, it's financial counsellors, and many of our attendees, no doubt, as well. So it's about having those right conversations. And our leadership team's about that. Like our hardship team's called our customer care team, because it's about providing that little bit of extra care. I know you can call it different things, but the reality of it is you want to have those good, constructive conversations. The energy audits, we absolutely do energy audits. We partnered with a group that was providing seminars on energy audits a little while ago. We didn't get a great take up on that, but having conversations with customers about their usage, a lot of people have found really helpful, and we find that is another way to build that rapport with people as well. Community groups, we've partnered with the Thriving Communities Partnership in the various states to get our name out there. It's not about promoting us, but it's about reminding people that we want to help. And we really value the work that the financial counsellors and community legal groups and the like do. We meet a lot of those face-to-face. A lot of our outreach in New South Wales, not trying to start a state war, but we attend a regular stallholder at the FCAN events and a lot of the outreach that EWOQ does. So we just like to try to get out there, make sure people can understand who we are, and I guess really utilise those relationships with the FinCos and other community groups so that they have that rapport with us and they feel like, not they feel like, but they actually do know that they can contact us and speak to our care team, and that if they've got a problem, they can get it solved through us. And speaking about complaint numbers, I can't tell you about our overall complaint numbers. I don't have that data, but one of my key responsibilities is complaints that go to Jane's team and the other ombudsman schemes around the country. And we don't get a lot of complaints. They're very few and far between where a customer feels they need to go to an ombudsman scheme because they've been unhappy with the way things have gone when they've been in touch with our care team or when they've had a financial counsellor helping them. Those things usually get resolved in one call. When I say resolved in one call, it doesn't mean the debt goes away, but it means that they feel that they can work to a solution. And we've got some payment matching programs that we use. We find that's sometimes money better spent than, say, going for external energy audits and things like that. So, a customer might get a payment matching scheme for 1 in 6 or 1 in 12, and in some cases 1 in 1, to make the customer feel that they're contributing and that they're having a bit of a win as well, which builds that rapport, which takes away some of those things. I mean, it sounds a little idealistic, but it works.
Great. Thank you very much, Derek. I have a question here, which I think I know the answer, but I'll put it out there. So a question that we've received is, if a person has experienced hardship, are the climate, environment or location and conditions that they're living in taken into account? For example, for us, for Queensland, we're into our high bills because we're into the summer here. So this will be our high bills period. And, I know for Victoria, you're at the other side of your high bills period because you've gone through the winter and we're now into spring. I would be very pleased to be able to say I'm 100% certain that all of these teams would consider those aspects when they're looking at a hardship or assistance request. But if anyone's going to break my heart and tell me it's not 100%, please speak now and let me know. But no. So yes, I'm very comfortable because I do know my team, when they actually talk to people, that's what they talk about. That's what they're looking at and understanding as well. And that it's, we all understand that the climate and location is an impact on all of us here. The country we're in has, one end to the other at the same time in some locations. So we need to allow for that. So I'm pleased to hear that everyone on here today, no one's going to break my view of 100% understanding and application of that. So that's great. So one of the other questions we've got is, who is the provider of last resort? If disconnection is declined by retailers, who is able to ensure a client has access to an essential service here in Queensland?
Can I have a crack at this one, Jane?
Absolutely, Derek.
So I read this one and I thought, I wonder where the question was. I mean, I know who the question's coming from, but I wonder. So retailer of last resort's a different phrase which we use in the industry, which I'm sure everyone on the panel is familiar with. So if a retailer goes bust and has to fold and spill their customers, there is a certain retailer responsible for them. But I think what might be more helpful for the person who asked this question, if someone's refusing if someone can't get connected because they're failing credit checks or what have you, whoever the last retailer was to have an account for that customer, what we call the FRUMP, or the financially responsible something market participant, I've never questioned it, must take that customer on. you can, and so the obvious question is, well, how would I ever find that out? I understand you could ring Energex and your team as well, Jane. You'd have access to that. But if you're being refused a service by the retailer that was previously there, I'm embarrassed to say that you would probably need to call Jane's team at EWOQ and say they're not letting me in.
Can I just further add to that, Derek? Because the one that I dare say this would be a customer who would be affected by this is the one that is leaving or is transitioning from one house to another as well. So they may have been forced out of their home trying to get into a new type of home. And I'm not quite sure that applies to the existing energy provider if they move into a new premises.
Yeah, sorry, I should clarify, John. What I meant was you're right. It's the retailer who last had the billing right, so who last had a customer at that address. So if you're a Red Energy customer, for example, and you're moving to another address that Red Energy was the last customer for, and the customer would never really know that, then Red Energy must take that customer on. But if Origin, for example, was the last retailer at that address, or AGL or whoever that was, then they have an obligation to take that customer.
Yeah. So can I just contribute with a few questions, Jane? I don't mean,
absolutely,
I
John.
just think, and I'm going to put a few of the panelists on the spot. And I can, I've heard fantastic things, and we hear it quite often particularly from the financial counselling sector. I just want to pick up, Derek mentioned, going to conferences at FCAN, and you've had some association there. This year, we had no buy-in from energy retailers that have customers in Queensland to attend our conference in March. So when you throw, having a relationship with the financial counselling sector, when we see it on the ground, we don't see it. It was very disappointing. And we did put the invites out. I know Jane worked very hard as well, and it was very disappointing because, financial counsellors and capability workers and community workers in Queensland work so hard with the vulnerable clients, particularly in the essential services space. And when we're trying to reach out to get or to form a relationship to ensure that or trying to reduce the obstacles for vulnerable clients, it's sort of, it casts doubt into what you're saying to helping customers when we're trying to say, hey, we want to put our hand out to improve our relationship because it's so important. It's such an important relationship. So I just want to, if you've got any comments in that, I'd love to hear from you. But I also would like, with that previous question that Natasha had raised, there's no answer for it at the moment. But it's such an important question because we're looking in COVID, we're looking at a lot of people being forced out of homes, which Jane clearly has identified. We're looking at a lot of people trying to re-enter into the housing market, but most likely will have a credit notification on their reports or some electricity debt overhanging them, which is an obstacle to get back into the electricity market. And I think from that point of view, how can we look at those sorts of presenting issues that we're going to see quite regularly? How can we work together to ensure that people have electricity, particularly in the climate that we experience in Australia, because it's such an essential service.
John, I don't know if that was directed straight at me, but there absolutely is an answer to that one, and that is that the previous retailer has an obligation to take on a customer, regardless of their credit status. And I know that they won't know who the previous retailer is, but Energex, or Ergon, I assume in the Ergon area as well, but that was bad of me because we only deal with southeast Queensland. But or Jane's team at EWOQ will be able to tell you or your client who the retailer is that's obliged to take them. And I'm hoping if you've ever had an experience contacting Red Energy, we've got identification that we were the last retailer and therefore would take that customer. As for the other,
it's if they've moved to a new address, that doesn't apply.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does.
So what you're saying then is if a person has left an address with a debt,
yep,
but now has time to move into a new address,
yep,
that energy company has an obligation to then start up a new account in that new address.
Not the previous energy company for that customer, but the energy company that previously held an account at that address. So if you're moving from 1 Smith Street and you have to leave for whatever circumstance and you've got a debt, doesn't matter how bad that debt is, you've got a really low credit score, you're not going to pass any credit checks or anything like that. If you move into 10 Brown Street, the previous retailer at 10 Brown Street must take that customer. They have an obligation to do so. And the difficulty is that not everybody would know that. And how would you ever find out who that previous retailer was? Because unless there was mail there, and even then you're only guessing. But if you couldn't find out, then the distributor
would know that. Would your staff know that if that was presented to your staff?
Yeah. So if someone rang us and said, "I'm trying to connect to service," one of the first things we do, it's horrible to say this, is we look at the address. And if we had the billing rights, and we would have access to that on our screen, if we had the billing rights, and we have an obligation, we won't even do a credit check. There's one other thing we'll do as well, and there's another question later on, but customers who have experienced family violence, if they advise us of that either on their online sign up or verbally, we actually just waive the credit check regardless. So we don't actually do that. And there's a rule change that we've put forward that's on the AEMC website that a lot of the retailers on this forum have been a part of as well, and we're lobbying for that to become a rule in place to help those most vulnerable people. But for the people who aren't, then yes, everything else that I just said absolutely applies. And John, I'm happy to take offline if you want to have a bigger discussion about it, and I can give you some more advice around that.
I see that this is going to be a real problem, not just in Queensland, but everywhere. And I just think we need to work together, not from top to top, but down the bottom where we do most of the dialogue with your staff that work in your teams, that we are on the same page when it comes to this sort of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's national, by the way. That's not a Queensland rule. That's in that's Vic, New South Wales. They're saying Queensland, that rule applies. And my colleagues on the panel are nodding. I think they all agree. Happy for them to disagree, but.
Great. Thanks very much, Derek and John. And look, I think this is great grounds for us to have a further discussion. And if you're happy with that, I can look at organising something offline for us to talk about, and noting both Rose and Natasha's comments about how can we expect a customer to know how could we solve this problem, and also how can we find a way to streamline this process. So I'm really happy to make that arrangements and get the relevant areas beyond just us in the room to have those conversations as well. I think that'd be great. And yeah, I agree with John. I think it's going to be very much an ongoing issue going forward. And you know, as the housing market continues to travel down the road we're going in Queensland, you know, we need to come up with a solution. And yes, I agree with Barry. This is a simple process in North Queensland because there is only one provider, and they are it. And if there was anything that ever come through our office that there was a problem, it would be Georgie or above that the contact would come from me to say what is going on in your organisation and why isn't this occurring. And thankfully, I've never had to have that conversation. So that's the positive and the negatives of being the only provider for such a large geographical part of our state. So we're actually come to the end of our session right now. So I just would like to thank everyone for their time and their contribution today. So it's been a really great discussion. We got through the main questions. There was a lot more questions that I had to ask that I haven't been able to get through to. But we're looking at taking that conversation offline, which I think will be great, and we'll make sure that we keep everyone that's been in there today updated as we progress that through. I am hoping that we will see a lot of our panel members today themselves or representatives from their organisation at the FCAQ Conference here in Brisbane in early, is it March, John?
Yeah, mid-March.
Mid-March. We'll turn on the really nice weather for you and you'll have a great time, and we'll be looking forward to having you join us there as well, so that the people that have heard you today and seen you online can actually see and meet you in person. That would be wonderful to get everyone back up there again in those conversations. So there's the contact details for our organisation there if anyone needs that information. As I said, we'll be sending out the contact details and more information for the presenters today, so you can get in contact with them and their teams. And we'll all be getting the survey sent out to us for completion, and we really appreciate you completing that so that we can make sure that we get the conversations and whatever we do in the future right for everyone that's attended today. So thank you very much everyone for your time. Really appreciate the conversation and your answers, and I wish everyone safe travels, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.